Hello and welcome. We're so glad you could join us for this session. This is the third in a series of online conversations on topics in choral music hosted by Choral Arts New England. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Choral Arts New England or CANE, we are in our 40th year of encouraging choral excellence through our Alfred Nash Patterson Grant Program and through our our annual Lifetime Achievement Awards. More information can be found at our website, which is choralarts-newengland.org, including information about how to apply for grants. My name is Greg Brown. I am the board chair-elect for Choral Arts New England. I studied conducting at Westminster Choir College and at the University of Georgia in Athens, and currently work primarily as a composer in Western Massachusetts. I will be the host and moderator tonight. I am joined by three panelists who have far more experience in the realm of virtual choirs and online music making than I do. First up is Zach Moore. Zach is an American composer, arranger, and educator. He is a 2015 graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and currently teaches at Waukesha West High School. In March of 2020, when the COVID-19 virus shut down the state of Wisconsin, Zach was determined to keep music alive in Wisconsin and spearheaded his first ever virtual choir. This performance involved 1,403 students from 35 different schools around the state of Wisconsin. Our second panelist tonight is Liz Bologna. Liz is a professional singer in Greater Hartford. Currently, Liz sings with Voce, Voices of Consinity, and the Schola Cantorum at the Cathedral of St. Joseph in Hartford. She has appeared on a number of CDs and worked with several notable composers, including Ola Yellow, Eric Eschenbaltz, Paul Mueller, and Eric Whitaker. In addition, Liz is part of two ongoing virtual choir projects for new compositions by Thomas Lavoie and Cheryl B. Engelhardt, and has participated in the Songs of Comfort project, recording virtual choir music for those hospitalized with or otherwise affected by COVID-19. Our third panelist tonight is Zachary Beeksma. Zachary is the Director of Choirs and Chair of Art and Music at Nathan Hale High School in West Allis, Wisconsin. He holds a Bachelor of Music Education from Northern Michigan University, a Master of Music from Westminster Choir College, and he is currently pursuing a specialist degree in Educational Leadership from Arkansas State University. He has performed in numerous choirs and theater productions and is a regular member of the professional recording ensemble The Same Stream Choir, based out of Philadelphia. The format this evening will be as follows. Each panelist will take a few minutes to explain what they do and how they do it. I've asked them to give as much detail as possible. My hope is that even folks in the audience who are already creating virtual choirs will learn some new solutions and methods to go about it. After all the panelists have presented, I will start off a question and answer session. There is a question and answer feature down below. Feel free to use that at any time. I will curate those questions as I am able. Before we get started, let's briefly define the term virtual choir so that we're all starting from the same place. A virtual choir consists of individuals recording their own parts along with some sort of guide to keep them in tempo. Someone else then later collates and synchronizes the separate files into a single performance. So with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get right into it with Zach Moore.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we'll just start from the beginning to end type of process, and I will do my very best to keep the language at a level that everyone will understand. So to begin with, some things that you're going to need at the very basic to have a virtual choir type of process. So you're gonna need a digital audio workstation, or a DAW, and that can be like Logic or Audacity, or some of the other panelists will share some other types of DAWs down the road. So some type of digital audio workstation, a computer with a decent amount of processing power that can handle what you are set out to do, some type of film editing program. It doesn't have to be anything extreme. And studio headphones I find to be very helpful for editing the audio in the end of it all. The preparation for the virtual choir, you're going to need practice tracks of some type. And the thing with the practice tracks, it can't just be you individually playing the parts 4 different times. They have to sync up. That's my perspective. I would recommend looking at Matthew Curtis's choral tracks, choral practice tracks. Those will work really well for you. The whole point is that you're going to use that practice track as that guiding track, just as what Greg kind of said, with either tempo or something like that, especially if it is a piece of music that is a cappella. The ability to keep singers in the same key is just huge. And no one wants to use auto-tune. It just doesn't sound right. That's not what choir is about. And hopefully this is sort of keeping it sort of natural. And you just have to get over the fact that you're kind of spoon feeding the singers a little bit. So some type of conducting track as well. Although I will say that conducting isn't as huge as an emphasis as it would be in live performance in this situation. In my opinion, it's more of a show thing that people just put the conductor on there and because it looks natural. That's my perspective as to how the last 2 virtual choirs that I've done have gone. And then a PDF of the sheet music, of course, so that they can see what is going on. I would recommend that if you're sharing those resources, putting it onto a PDF with hyperlinks is a really great way of sharing those types of resources. I think that if a resource is very large, it can take hours sometimes to download, especially if the students or the singers are downloading videos from you. That can take a long time depending on their internet and all that. So upload it all to YouTube, send it as hyperlinks, so it's just nice and easy for everyone to get to everything really quickly. What the performers need: headphones to hear their guided track. You don't want to hear the clicking of a metronome in the background. You don't want to hear the practice track in the background. You just want a nice, clean, quiet recording of just the voice happening. Any type of electronic device to record, to be honest, works just fine. I was worried about the low end with using cell phones, but I found that there was no issue with that at all. So you shouldn't be worried about that either. A basic knowledge of what makes a good recording is also important for the singers to know what it means to be peaking in an audio track. And it's either the recording is good or bad. And if it's bad, you can't fix it in the back end of anything like that. If it's clipping, that's just how it's going to be. So being sure that they're not recording at a level that is too much, and to be sure that they understand that the room has noise as well, and you might hear the rattling of an air conditioning vent or something like that, and just to be in as quiet a possible place as you can. I know another panelist will talk about the importance of being in a quiet place and how that impacts microphone use and all that as well. So, that basic knowledge is huge, and something that I think a lot of choral directors overlook as well, that the things we typically don't have to think about in a concert venue is what makes a good recording. So just keeping that in mind. Okay, now I'm going to screen share here. I'm going to go a bit into the editing. I'm kind of flying through this process really quickly, so I apologize. You can ask questions in the back end, but this is what I use for editing. It's Logic, and let's see if I can get here. Can you all see that? I'm guessing. Yep, cool. Okay, so this is Logic. This is one of the 17 different choirs I had in that 1,400 voice virtual choir. And the reason why I had to split it up into 17 different choirs was for the sake of processing power. Once I got around 50 voices to 60 voices, depending on how many edits I had to make, my computer started yelling at me saying, "Stop, otherwise I'm going to die." So being just aware of your computer processing power is huge. Now, I talked before about the DAW, and I think one of the most essential parts of a DAW that you're going to need is something called flex editing. And what that does is you can basically manipulate the waveform of a singer. So if you look down here, I hope you can kind of see my mouse. I'm not sure how laggy it is, but there are some lines that are here. Each one of these is an edit to the waveform. So I can literally take this, drag it, and move it around like that. I can literally make a singer not breathe the entire time if I really wanted to. You can do anything you want with it. And it's the little things like consonances, cutoffs that I feel as if we all take for granted because we're in the room and it's so easy to do. But I can tell you now that I have never had such an appreciation for cutoffs and consonances until doing this project. There's so little, but to get them perfect is something. So you'll see that for a lot of these tracks, I'll kind of just go through these quickly. You can see that there are a lot of flex editing things that happen here. And to be honest, it takes a long time. When I first began, I wanted it to be as perfect as possible so that on the back end, I wouldn't be kicking myself in the face for being lazy early on. And what I found actually was by doing, say, 75% of the tracks pretty perfectly, with the last 25%, I was able to just throw them in there because there were so many tracks that were perfect, and those little errors that the other singers were making weren't coming through as much. And to be honest, by not having everyone be perfect, it also added a sense of authenticity to the final product as well. It has, those natural singers that just happen to come in early in a live performance, and those natural singers that happen to come in late after performance. And it just keeps that nice natural quality to it all.
Zach, can we hear some of that? Maybe
sure.
Is this a good time for that, or?
Yeah, let's see if I can do. Do you want to play it on your end, or?
Yeah, if you stop screen sharing, I can screen share that video.
Sure. Actually, do you want to play the Road Home one first?
Yeah, sure. I'll play the Road Home, and then we.
Awesome. There you go.
There we go.
Tell me where is the road I can call my own, that I left, that I lost so long ago. All these years I have wandered, oh, when will I know? There's a way, there's a road that will lead me home.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you see me?
I can see you just fine. Yep.
Oh boy. Okay, this will be interesting now. Okay. That's fine. We'll go like this. So I'll go back to screen sharing. You're going to see ourselves here in a moment here. So 1 second. Screen share. Desktop 1. Share. Okay. So I gotta pull up my notes again because my things just got crazy. Okay. So I would recommend going into having 2 files to edit. I feel as if editing audio separate from video is a lot easier on you as well as the computer. When adjusting audio tracks, it's a lot easier to get everything to line up, and you don't have to worry about the lining up of the mouths with the words or anything like that as well. Quite frankly, I don't know how that works. I'm sure there's ways to do it. I'm not that versatile with technology. I have not figured that out yet. But if you are going the audio video route, I want to pull up really quickly for you that video you kind of just saw right here. So Road Home. Okay, so I just played that. It was just played for you. Something that you might not realize actually is this video was 5 different exports for me because that's what my computer could handle. So these 4 singers right here was 1 video export first, and then I had to crop that. These 4 singers was another audio export or video export. So I had these 8 together then, and then I had to put these 4 in each corner and export then all of those together. And then I had to add these 3 on top of that in order to have enough processing power with my computer in order to get everything to work. Otherwise, it was like waiting a minute for my mouse to get over to the video to edit it. And it's just, it becomes more of a waiting process, and it's just not fun. So that's something you might have to do if you go into video. I would recommend exporting the videos, or somehow, what's the word? Compressing the videos to make them smaller files. I did not do that, which was probably really dumb on my part. I would just find a way to make it as small as you can. Honestly, the video quality isn't a huge thing, and it won't be a huge deal because most of the screens are so small, you're not going to see much of a loss in quality. So make the video files as small as you can. And I guess the last thing I would say, I'm going to kind of close it out of this, is if you are going to do a virtual choir, please don't make it like every other virtual choir that's out there. Another thing I don't think conductors realize is you are up against the melting pot of YouTube. You're going to put out another virtual choir, and it's just going to simply get lost out there. I'm telling you the truth. Just make it special, make it something that is unique to you, so that when people watch, they can say, wow, that wasn't like, the typical checkerboard faces on the screen. It's something different, unique, or maybe there was a special reason as to why you did it. But the thing that cannot be lost in these performances is the human quality that music gives to everyone, because that is what connects us all, and we cannot lose it all through a robotic performance of virtual choir. So that's my last piece. Greg, if you want to play the intro of that 1400 voice, I think that's a really good example of keeping the emotion behind music and what it is.
Absolutely. Let me get that
Thank you.
pulled up. Oops, let's see here.
So what he's going to show you, I think you can all hear me still, is the opening of the 1400 whatever voice. And it takes about a minute to get to the actual song. So if you want to watch the actual song later, you can do that. But this is how we opened up this performance.
Yeah, we'll play like the opening minute and a half of this. And hopefully,
okay.
Can you see it okay?
I can see it. It's buffering right now, I think. Always, I could try to pull it up on my end if you want.
Let's just do a quick reload and see if that fixes it. And if it doesn't, maybe we'll do something else. Fascinating. Why don't you go ahead and try and share it from yours, Zach,
Sure.
and
Okay.
I'll try and figure out what's going on my computer.
Sounds good. One moment. Let's go over here. Pull up that. Go here. Okay. Let's go like that.
It's magically working on my computer. You want to just use mine?
Oh, it is? I think I got it on mine too.
Go for it.
So here we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Awesome. Can you hear it? Is it playing any sound? Okay.
The language of the heart and soul.
Something that connects all of us.
Everywhere.
Powerful. A way to express yourself.
Greatest.
And liberation. A way to express
Music is powerful.
Life.
Something that brings us together.
A chance to express
Something that connects the The language that brings people together.
Well, creativity in its own way.
A way to make everlasting friendships.
What brings us together?
My foundation.
Meaning.
A way to express yourself.
My escape.
In everything around us.
Validating.
Music, a feeling of letting go of reality.
So there's a little bit of that. That's all I really have. I'm going to share one more video, not with everyone. I'll put it in the messenger for everyone to view. But it's a further extended video about my current concerns, kind of about virtual choir and funding and how much it actually costs to actually do one of these projects. If you're going to kind of go all out, feel free to watch that if you want. But that's all I have to say. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. And I would recommend, yeah, definitely check out that video that Zach's going to post a link to. He gets into a lot of sort of the philosophy of, and we may have time to get into that later, sort of what is a virtual choir really a choir, and what are we asking our students and conductors to do. All right, so let's move to Liz, who will give us the perspective of someone who is singing these.
Sure. So you can see I'm here in my glamorous home office studio. And it's really, I have a very homemade situation. So what's different for me is that as opposed to students, I'm fortunate that all of my devices are my own. I'm not sharing them with anybody. I can do this sort of when I want. That being said, I have a roommate. I live in a house where there are 4 of us, plus a cat and a dog, and there's the neighbors mowing their lawn right there. And it's summer now, there's a lot more sound going on. So I'm very aware of how much noise I'm making throughout the day, but also aware that I still want to be able to do this and do my job. So I'm going to ask Greg to just share a couple photos of my very fancy setup here. And then let's see. Okay, yeah, that right there is what this whole process looks like. That's me. I've got one hand scrolling through the score here, and I sort of look like a possessed person or something. If you keep going, there's me again, and that's my cat Karma. So she'll sometimes pop in and out. But okay, so here's what my setup looks like to me. I have this nice stack of notebooks that I've propped my laptop on. And what normally happens for me now is that I will watch the conducting score or listen to the click track or the MIDI file from my tablet device, or I'll sometimes use my phone and plug my headphones into that. And then I'll use my laptop, just a QuickTime video, to record the video. I do not recommend trying to do the recording and the watching/listening from the same device, because oftentimes, particularly in these headphones, it will pick up. So this mic here will actually pick up the sound that's coming through my headphones. So you'll get, like a echo effect or something. The other thing that'll happen with this mic is that, at least for me, particularly on held notes, and if it needs to be quiet, it will pick up my heartbeat, which is not helpful to anyone, particularly, trying to stick this all together later. And then the other thing I have to now think about is, there's a window behind me, which I know is not a great setup. And do I have an overhead light? What is the lighting on my face like? So it's difficult to try and do my job as a singer when I'm also thinking so much more about, what do I look like? What does my space look like? What else are people hearing? So it's a very strange experience, to say the least. But we're making do of it. And one thing that I will say, I know it's nice to have the video component. It's cute that you can see everyone together. I love it when you don't do videos. For everyone doing virtual choirs, it's great when you don't have to do a video, because then the one nice thing I have is my Tascam recorder here, which can record sound much better than anything else I have. And I can set it up where I can be further away, because I'm not thinking about how I look or what they're seeing behind me. So the sound is much better that way. Now, the other option is to record separately. I could do just the sound and then record a video of myself lip syncing to that sound. Or I can record the video while I record the audio separately, and then send those 2 files separately, depending on the person who's putting it together and what their capabilities are. So there are a lot of different ways to approach how to do a project, depending on who's involved and what the ultimate goal is. Because if you want to have that video, then I have to be closer, and it has to be at eye level, preferably, and thinking about those things. Whereas when it's just the audio, my life is a little bit easier.
Very cool. Can you talk a little bit more about that Tascam? Like, I know I have a
Oh
little
yeah.
Zoom recorder. That's got a little stereo mic, and can you just put that in front of you, or do you put yourself in a
Oh.
closet? What do you do?
Oh, it depends. Well, so it depends on what it's for again. So I did one project where for Holy Week, I recorded the Exultet. And I was lucky enough that actually there's a church down the road where I could actually just set this up and record just the audio of myself in there. But if I'm using it, I put it about 3 feet in front of me, the way that I have the levels set up right now. That's usually where I put it. But I don't have any kind of like muffled closet set up, because no matter what, you're getting like a weirdly close sound. It's very strange to be recording and to get nothing of the room. I mean, that's the other thing, that yes, there's all like motorcycles and stuff happening, but the mics that you're going to be using are actually going to pick up a lot less than you think they are. So if singers who are interested, if you're doing a take and like somebody slams a door, a dog starts, keep going. Just go through it, because it's very possible that you'll listen back to it and it will have picked up none of that. So, you know, if when you sit down to do it and you're ready to do a take, do it all the way through as best you can, and like also be gentle with yourself and don't be too critical the first time through. I will say though, I know I'm getting a little off track, but I will say as a singer, never more than 5 takes at a time. Never, never, never. There's a point of diminishing returns. I almost always pick the second or the fourth. I don't know why. That's just sort of how it works out for me, but don't hammer it again and again. Like, go for a walk, go do something else. It's a very strange atmosphere to like be so hyper focused on this one part for yourself and think you have to get it exactly right. Like, give yourself a little time, a little space, and remember that, you know, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect.
I've done one of these virtual choir things for my alma mater's graduation. They did sort of an alumni choir, and I was really surprised at how hard it was to just be so exposed. You're so exposed, and
I
you're
can
all
tell
alone.
you,
but it's like, whoa.
You know that it's on a related philosophical note, it's a depressing situation to really do this in isolation. I cannot tell you how much I miss singing with my friends, my colleagues. There's no replacement for it. And the hard thing is, like from a technical standpoint, is a lot of the singers I work with, I've been singing with them in some cases since middle school. Like, we really know each other so well. So I can tell you exactly when I'm going to back off, when I'm going to breathe, when I'm going to take over. And none of that is able to happen right now. And it's so difficult that, like, you know, the photo you have up, this Breadth of Blossoms piece, there are 2 spots in particular. I was never going to get it correct. I just was not going to happen now, or if we were in a normal rehearsal situation, it was always going to be a hard spot for me. And, you know, thinking about it now, I'm like, I 100%, that's where I would have breathed, and I would have let Sarah take over that part, because I know she would have nailed it, and I would have let Cara take over here, and I would have just sort of eased myself in. But that's the really hard thing, is that a lot of the work that we do as singers, it's really impossible to replicate that.
Yep. Let's maybe do a tiny bit of the Songs of Comfort, which I think is just a wonderful project.
Yeah, so Songs of Comfort is something that Sarah Koffold and Greg Flower here in Connecticut thought of, that, you know, COVID-19 hit, everyone's in a really scary situation. And, you know, we heard about, you know, so many people are hospitalized alone. And so what they did is they've reached out to, I believe it was Middlesex Hospital here in Connecticut first, to say, you know, if a patient would like a song, we can do that. We can put one together. The turnaround time for this is usually fast. It's like record it in 2 days so we can get it to the patient. But yeah, it's such a nice project to be a part of, to know that like I can still share this, and I know people are getting it who really need it.
Yeah. So yeah, let's listen to maybe you know, a little bit of this here.
It's been recorded for a patient at Middlesex Hospital.
There
So that's great. And you can find out more about that project. Maybe you can share a link. I know, I think Sarah Koffold is here. She may have a link she can share as well.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, very cool. Thank you, Liz. Let's move on to our last panelist, Zachary.
Hi. So I've done several recordings since we've gone into quarantine, kind of exploring all of the different aspects of recording from the context of someone who prior to this had done zero at-home recording, really no video editing, a little bit of audio editing. I actually have a lot of experience with live sound, but not as much with post-production and things like that. So I'm going to share that perspective. The first project that we did with my choirs was Deep Peace, which is our, I guess it's our encore that we sing. It's our song that we come to in times of comfort or need, or something that every single one of my kids knew. And this is the first thing that they did when school was closed. So if we could bring up that video right away, I think listen to a little bit and then I'll talk about it. Cool. So a few things. First off, this was, as soon as we went away, my kids were clamoring for the connection that they had felt in choir. And many of them didn't actually want to record themselves singing, and they really didn't want to record themselves in video. And so I decided instead to have them send a message, and we shared this song with the rest of our district. And so all of the little notes and pictures and drawings and things on there are things that my students put together with the idea that it was being shared with their peers. So from a logistical standpoint, you can hear some rookie mistakes in that recording, which I think is really kind of instructional for everyone. So you can hear the piano sound in the background, right? That was not meant to be there. It's meant to be a cappella. But as Liz was talking about, if your students are recording with their headphones and mic all in one setup, it picks up the piano. And because this was meant to be about unity and about us, and I really didn't care that the final product was rough. I mean, it's a high school concert, like stuff happens. So we put it out anyway, but those are the kind of logistical things, like you hear that in there that you don't want to. What I did for this, especially because everyone knew the song already, is that I just played all the parts on the piano and sent it out. I played them part dominant, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So the DAW that I use is called Cakewalk, and this is a DAW that I chose for my sound engineering and recording class that I started this year before we went into quarantine, so we have one semester of it. The reason that I chose this is because it's free, and I wanted my students to have experience with something that they could go home and get. So this used to be Sonar, which was a for-pay enterprise, and BandLab, which owns that umbrella company decided to change their pricing model, and they're instead selling plugins and stuff like that. So the DAW itself is free. So if you're looking for something to screw around with, Cakewalk by BandLab. So here you can see I'm putting together tracks for the Star Spangled Banner so that we can have something for our virtual graduation. I have a little bit of a click track. Here I'm trying to have them go, like, so they're gonna clap on that third click. And then I have part dominant recordings of each part. So I played soprano part in my keyboard, then I listened to that in my headphones, played the alto part in my keyboard, listened to that in my headphones, etc. And that's how I've put together a few of these.
And Zachary, what's the point of the clap, just so everybody understands?
Yeah, so I didn't use that on an earlier project, and then I saw that the new Whitaker project had them doing that, and I was like, oh, that makes complete sense. Now there's a really sharp, easy spot to line them up. Because in the other recording that I put together in Paradisum, I actually struggled really hard lining up some of the recordings because, well, I mean, the opening sound is a vowel, and some people were a little bit, yep, where is this? And so then I wasted a lot of time sliding it back and forth and getting it exactly right. I followed the same process that Zach stumbled upon as well. I think we came up with the same idea that essentially when I'm mixing these, I pick one recording that I can bear listening to over and over and over and over again and line them all up with that one. So yeah. And a totally different way of doing the same thing is Soundtrap. So is this sharing my entire screen? Are you still seeing Cakewalk? You're good? Okay. So this is Soundtrap, which
sorry, Zach, we're still seeing Cakewalk, sorry.
Oh, okay. New share. Let's share Soundtrap. Okay. So Soundtrap is a DAW that's not hosted on your computer. So the idea is it's browser based. And I don't have a ton of experience with this. My students participated in a virtual choir that was hosted by the International Music Educators Summit, and that was hosted on Soundtrap. So this is just a demo because I had the 60-day coronavirus free usage, which has since expired. So in this demo, you can see that it's the same idea where there are vocals lined up on top of themselves, and this is just, what do they call it? The one-man choir. It's a guy layering himself over himself. But it's the same process. What's cool about this is that you can listen to everything as you record over the top of it. So if I like added a new track and I added a vocal track and I started recording, we're not actually going to do that. But if I started recording, then I could listen to in my headphones what the other people had done and record myself with it, which saves the time of lining everything up. It's a little bit different. My students had really mixed reactions to it, honestly. Some of the less tech-savvy students were incredibly frustrated by this experience. Some of the ones who had slower internet at home or older machines were also really frustrated by this experience because they said it kept crashing. The ones who had fast machines and fast internet thought it was cool because you could log in and it like all lined up right away and it was really cool. But if you are like my district and have a pretty big chunk of low-income kids, maybe not the best choice, but it depends on what you have going on in your situation. But this is a cool option where you don't have to do the editing. Let's see, if we go to In Paradisum, we can talk about that project. So this was an Ola Yelo piece. Oh, I think I have to stop share so Greg can share. Okay, so In Paradisum, Ola Yelo put this out on Facebook. He wrote this, Z. Randall Stroop, sorry. Z. Randall Stroop put this out on Facebook, and he was talking about how, you know, the feeling of hopelessness and the feeling of being alone and like, what can you do? And so I put this to directors in the WCDA, the Wisconsin Choral Directors Association Facebook group, seeing if anyone wanted to do some singing together as adults rather than just stuff for our students. So for this project, actually this little scene right here is perfect to show how I edited this, because I clearly didn't cut off enough at the beginning. I mastered these 10 in one go and then the next 10 in the next go. When Zach earlier was talking about your computer having enough processing power to mix all the videos. So I found I could do about 10 and then everything started crashing. So let's listen to just a little bit of this. And so for this project, the way that we lined up our songs was our tracks, is I played the parts again on the piano over a click track. So I created a click track that had the ritardando in it, that had the fermata in it, and I shared with the singers a PDF of the music with edits on it. So there was 3 or 4 fermata in there, and I was like, okay, this fermata is literally going to be counted. It's a half note fermata. It's now 4 beats. The last beat is, or the 5th beat then is the breath and the consonant, which kind of served the purpose of having a conductor. It worked for the most part. There's still some stray S's and T's and things, but I think even if I had been conducting, that would have happened. In this one, I really stressed to the people that were doing recording that they had to record with a second device, not the same device, put it away. Almost all of them recorded just with their phone, which you can hear the quality is fine. There, you saw at least one fancy microphone in there, but for the most part, everyone was just recording with their phone, which turned out just fine for these purposes. I did see a few other questions in there about microphones. I've also started doing some solo recording at home, which is not something I did before. You can see that I have a fancy condenser microphone here. I have a Rode NT1A, which is a large diaphragm condenser. It's made for picking up vocals or guitar or things, right there. And that works really well for solo singing. I've been happy with it. It talks to my computer via a
Oopsie. We lost you there for a second. I think you might have jiggled a cable.
Oh, am I back now?
You're back. You're fine.
Okay. Maybe moving things around was a bad idea. So if you're using a regular microphone like this, with your computer, you need to have a digital interface that changes that analog signal into a digital signal that your computer can understand.
You can also buy microphones that are USB.
Exactly.
So that's another option. I'll ask an awkward question. How much does a Rode NT1 cost?
$300 bucks.
Shelf? How much?
About $300 bucks.
Okay, so 300. That's a good chunk of money, but it's great quality. Tell us a little bit about the little screen in front of it.
Yeah, so this comes with a pop filter, which is meant to lessen plosives. So if I were to, breathe into it, or the p of me making a P sound or something like that will really come across in the microphone, and it'll sound really unnatural. The air going across the filament makes something that you don't want in the recording.
Great. So is that should we move on? Are you guys, have you said everything you want to say? You're feeling good?
The first project that I put on there, just from the perspective of somebody who initially didn't have a lot of stuff at home, because it was just audio and pictures, I edited that and mastered it on my school laptop. The second one was on my nerdy computer in my other room, but that first one was just on my school laptop. So if you don't have the processing power that we're talking about to do videos and all those other things, audio only is totally doable on any halfway decent machine.
That's good to know. There have been one of the things I've noticed you all sort of said a little bit about was what do we want to see? You know, if you're going to make a virtual choir, what do we want to see? And it sounds like you're all perfectly okay with not seeing the Brady Bunch situation. There is one other wrinkle, and actually I think it came up in one of the chats. What about rights? I mean, so if you're working with adults, you're fine in terms of rights of images, but I would be personally worried about using images of minors or video of minors. Have any of you run into rights issues images?
I have not. When I went through the rights, it was a logistical nightmare at first. I was so afraid getting that many kids out there and then posting it and someone saying, my kid can't be in there. I think the easiest thing to do was to honestly to reach out to my administrator and ask them how they would word a specific letter or email that you're sending. It took care of every single issue in a matter of 5 minutes. And it just came down to sending out an email or typing up an email that basically stated, if I don't hear back from you, it is under my assumption that I can use your child's image. This is a conversation that I had with the admin, so this is understood. I sent that exact email to my administrator, got a screenshot of his reply saying, yes, this is okay with me, and sending it out to everyone so that nothing fell back onto me. I saw then a question also about rights of music. I'm not sure if this is still a thing, but Roger Emerson, that's the big composer, right, with Hal Leonard? Yeah. I saw that he said on Facebook that Hal Leonard was, for some extended period of time, I'm not sure if they still are, they were just giving exclusive rights to everyone to put out videos using their music, and you didn't have to pay anything, just completely free because of the situation that we are in. You might want to look into that. I saw that, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I would think that not much has changed. So,
also from the rights perspective, at least in my district, we have media sign-offs that everyone has with us anyways. So long as I'm acting in official capacity and using my students and they're not on the media opt-out list, like the do not share videos of, I'm fine. Obviously that gets different because Zach was pulling from a bunch of different school districts.
Yeah, I'm sure that got tricky. There's also questions about microphones. We talked a little bit about that. It sounds like the iPhone is fine. You know, your smartphone, the quality is fine. And I think we have to remember that we're often mixing together 16 or 1400 voices. And so it's going to get fairly complicated in terms of the waveforms. Go ahead, Zach.
I think the key word there is fine. Like having worked on sung a number of professional recordings, the amount of money that goes into the microphones and the recording system for singing on a CD is insane. And so we need to remember, you're not making a CD. It's not going to sound like a choral album. It's a stopgap for your school or something along those lines. And so like being fine is okay.
And I think that being said, I sort of I like doing virtual choirs. My pushback that I have is when we're trying to recreate the experience of singing in a group together. it's not possible. Like, I love that we're doing this. It's so not possible for a singer to do what we do and react the way that we do with each other. So I think it's really helpful. And Zach Moore, I think you had mentioned this too, that like this is a new thing, that yes, it is similar to what we had, but this is an almost a completely new medium, and a new approach to choral singing. And so there's more, I think, that can be done. There's a little more that we can play with, but the thing that I would love to see happen, Greg and Zach as composers, if you feel so inclined, as to really compose for the moment, for the technology that we have, thinking about, you know, this like 6x13 space that I'm in, and really doing something that's accessible that way. I'm so interested in right now, because we can't do what we used to, but we still want to try to do something.
Yeah. I'm working on something.
Beautiful.
Yes, I think Zach is too.
Well, you inspired me, so.
I'm so glad.
Good.
I would also just like to add, I don't want to change the subject, but something just to keep in mind is, what are we as educators really grading in the end? Is it the performance aspect, or is it the process? I don't want to go any more into detail about that, but I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind as well. So.
Yeah, and another thing, so and to jump in a little,
go.
because I know as educators you have classes still, and you're meeting. As you know, independent professional singer, we have dropped our rehearsals, we've dropped a lot of our interactions. And so one thing that I would suggest to people who want to do virtual choirs is leave a designated space for your singers to interact with each other, not necessarily with the conductor, although I think it's important to keep that as well. But if you can still hold sectionals, because a lot of the work that we do sounds like complaining to each other sometimes, but a lot of what we do is, I'm going to breathe here, I can't figure out his gesture there. Like, so much of what we do is collaborative, and we've lost a lot of that. So we feel a little extra isolated. So if you can, encourage your singers to still talk about how they're approaching things and how they're navigating this, because sometimes it's just like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this by myself.
So yeah, I couldn't agree more. A lot of what we've been talking about at Choral Arts New England is the ways in which choir creates community and sustains community. And you know, we've been talking to choirs about the ways that in lieu of singing, they are finding ways to be active together, and whether that means sewing masks for a local hospital, or raising money for something else, or doing cocktail hour, like anything, but just to remain connected, even if it's not singing for now. I want to try and get through the questions. So we talked a little bit about microphones and rights. We have a question here. Most of you seem to work with school choirs. For those of us directing community choirs skewing slightly older, how feasible is a virtual choir? I've heard that it's difficult, especially with people's internet connections not syncing up. So go ahead. You want to take that, Zach?
Oh,
or anybody?
Zach Beeksma, or go Zach, did you have something to say?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, well, in the In Paradisum video I put in there, obviously it's choral directors, but if you notice, the age of that choir skewed a little older. And so, you know, if we're thinking about people that maybe are not as tech savvy, or if that's what you're worried about, it's really not that complicated at home to do. And it doesn't need to sync up live on the internet. I think that might be a kind of misunderstanding about how these guide tracks are to work. Typically, you would go to Google Drive or something like that, download the track onto your iPad, play it in your ears, put your iPhone over there, and record that. So there really isn't any internet lag to worry about.
Yeah, and the lag is, I mean, just to really put it right out there, the lag is the issue. We're just talking now, and it's, you know, it's not perfect because there's a little bit of a lag, but it's easier to talk together. Once you start singing, the wait times going around, and even just 4 voices, the little boxes here, that creates a situation where it's just impossible to sync up. So if you create basically a template, a tempo map, whether that's a click track, which is just essentially a metronome, or a video, or a pianist playing something. Everyone can record to that, and then at the very end, you line everybody up because they were all with the same template.
Mm-hmm.
So that gets around the lag time because you're doing it asynchronously. Let's see here. I'm going back to the questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also going to add to that. First, I'm going to start off by saying that hopefully there's no illusion that this is an easy process that is quick. So you as the conductor most likely are going to also be the editor. It takes a lot of time no matter what. So why not add more time into what you're doing? And I would say create tutorials that screenshot what they need to do so that they can watch the video. Okay, this is where I need to click. Even if it's super simple, like where's the record button, just showing them where that is through a video process is going to make it so much easier. And I know it's a lot on your end, but it helped a lot of my kids out. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A question about uploading videos. So when kids, or your singers, or Liz, when you create a video, how do you get it to the central place?
Usually what's happening, it's almost always on Google Drive or on Dropbox, so that once I've made the video, I can just put it in whatever folder I've been told to put it in. It goes there, and then that's all I have to do. That's making my life easy.
Is there any particular way you prefer to receive them, Zach or Zachary?
Google Drive.
Google Drive.
But the thing with Google Drive is, if you're using younger singers, I'm always afraid that some hooligan's going to go in and delete other people's tracks or something. I don't know if they have that capability, but I'm always afraid that that's going to happen. So
yeah, they do have that capability.
Yep.
We used Google Classroom since it was in the context of our class. So they just for the student one, they just submitted it as if they were submitting an assignment, and then I could pull them down from Google.
Dropbox. Sorry.
Oh, the adult one was Google Drive. Yeah.
If you use Dropbox, I've seen there. I haven't set it up this way for myself, but I've submitted recordings that way. There are permissions you can set up that when you share a folder, nobody else can see what you've put in there. It's just the person who set it up, which I thought was really interesting because it was a situation where I wanted to sneak a peek and see what some of the other sopranos had submitted, and I was like, oh, I have nothing to compare it to. Okay, well, hopefully it's good.
We have a question about video editing programs. Personally, I use, there are so many options. I use Final Cut X or Final Cut Pro, whatever it is, the latest. Zachary?
Go ahead, Zach.
Either one, just somebody speak up.
So staying on the using free software train, I've been using Lightworks, which has a pro and a free version, and the free version actually is incredibly powerful. So that's what I used to edit together the In Paradisum video, was Lightworks.
I don't know that program.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Zach, if you want to explain that one further. Okay. What I use, I've used 3 different ones I've tried out. I've used iMovie because that one's just free and comes with it. I've tried Movie Edit Pro video editor, and that one you can minimize the video clips super easy and they snap real nicely, but I feel like the processing power it didn't work well with my computer, I thought. And then I have a subscription to Adobe, and I use Premiere Pro 2020, and that's just $20 a month. So if you just pay a $20 a month thing, you can get a really high quality video editing software.
Cool.
And what sort of memory and processing power are we talking about?
I feel, I'm taking a guess. Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, but for Premiere Pro, I feel like I used 5 gigs of RAM to process a lot of things. And then there's also the waiting for things to render, which basically means to process and load, so it doesn't have to load every time, it's just already loaded. But then if you make a small edit, you have to process it again or render it again. So
right. And well, I use this as an excuse to buy some additional RAM for my gaming computer. So that's
darn you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the short answer in terms of what it takes to work with video is it either takes a lot of processing power or a lot of time.
Yep.
So you're either going to be waiting a long time for your videos to render or drag across the screen, or you're paying a lot for the computer to just have the space to do it quickly. And I don't think there's any way around that.
I will say, even to upload, oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Even like just me, my one video, to upload a video, like it might be a 4-minute song. It might take 45 minutes to finally upload even to Google Drive. Like it seems bonkers.
Yeah.
And I think the video processing editing video taking so much processing power, like really drives home that we all agree the audio editing is best done in an audio editing software, not when you're doing the video. So like,
oh God, no. Woo.
Just like to make that clear that we all, I'm pretty sure Zach agrees, that we all do all the audio editing separate, make a track that is beautiful MP3, like could be sent off as it is. And then that's then the guide track for the videos that you're editing in your software.
Yeah. Aaron just asked a question about feedback that we've gotten from singers or things like that. And I think it's kind of been touched upon, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone else, but I think the biggest feedback I've gotten is just the nerve-wracking experience of recording by yourself and having no one else to shelter you. That's something I didn't think about, and I actually had to make a video about. So many students think that they don't think about the editing process, and then when they hear their favorite pop singer on the radio, they think that's just how they sound automatically. And they need to understand that when you ask them to sing as perfectly as they can, that includes their imperfections as well, because their imperfections are equally as important as their perfections as to what makes their voice special and unique. And the moment that they understand that, and honestly, that no matter how perfect they make the track, it still won't be perfect, and they just need to kind of get over that, and that you're the only one that's going to hear that, they feel a lot better about that. So that was the largest piece of feedback I got from all the students that I worked with, is just how scary that was at first until I put out the video that everything's okay. You don't have to be afraid.
Yeah. The other thing I think that Erin's my roommate, by the way, so I know what she's asking about. But one thing that I think you're going to find with older singers and singers who aren't being graded, we are not as good at following directions strictly. That, you know, in a lot of my ensembles, it's a lot of give and take. It's a lot of collaboration. And we might say, you know, your gesture here is not what I need something else instead. And because I can't do that, I have the one conducting video. And I know that other people, you know, for this project with Voices of Concinnity, the way that we did it is one person recorded, and then the next would record to her track, and the next would record to those two tracks together. So we did this sort of layering thing. So it sort of was as if we were singing together. However, I went first on that one, and I was like, guess what, guys? All of my mistakes are now your mistakes. You just have to use them. The one thing that I would ask directors, and I know it's going to take extra editing though, so I'm hesitant to say it, but it depends on the piece. If you choose one that has sort of these grand pauses, that maybe it's more possible to really do it in pieces, because one thing we're losing is the leading voice. That I know that, you know, if the altos are going to set the tempo in the next coming measures, and I don't have them to rely on, I don't have them to follow. You know, if an alto is recording after me, Erin, for instance, she's sort of like, why did you do it this way? This is not at all what I needed to get into my section. And it's like, right, I forgot, we can't do that together. So I don't know if it's worth it to try to approach pieces in chunks, like everybody do the A section and then say the basses start the B section. So now we're going to have the basses run with it, and then everyone else sort of follow. If you do it in that layering way, I don't know if anybody else is trying that.
That's kind of how Tom Lavoie is doing the piece he did.
You're doing that one too?
Yeah, I'm doing that one too.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so that one he had it broken into 3 chunks.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, y'all do this chunk, and then the next chunk. From an editing perspective, I don't think it would be any harder, really, because you just put the chunks together then after you're done. It really wouldn't take very much more.
How about more people try that, and then we see how that goes? It's sort of nice for the singers too, because you don't have to, then you don't feel like I got to sit down and get this 6 minutes perfect all in one take. Like, you can sort of break it up a little. I don't know, just a thought.
No, that's interesting. There's a question from a while back. At one point, Zach were talking about editing the audio first and then the video. And the question is, if you are time warping the audio, how do you make sure the video is then in sync? Or do you just not? Is it just close enough?
So the nice thing about having reference tracks like Matthew Curtis or anything like that perfect is that they send their audio file right away along with the video file of them mouthing the words, because they know that eventually that is what the tempo is going to be set at, so that they don't have to worry about morphing words or anything like that. And so when I did the road home, for example, I edited all the students with the demo tracks of Matthew Curtis singing, so that his timing lined up exactly with what the timing was with their mouthing of words. And that kind of just fixed it all right there.
Yeah, and I did not do any like warping of time. I definitely hacked off some stray S's and T's, but left the timing as it was. So they all were exactly the same when we put it with the video.
I'm curious, given the way YouTube works and the way compression works, and the fact that YouTube is not always synced up, I'm wondering if people would even notice if the sound got, and we're talking about what, 15, 20 milliseconds. I don't think people would notice even.
It depends.
I had a comment from Amelia Leclerc. It sounds like they just did the Cozzolani Magnificat in 4 chunks, and I'm guessing that probably worked well. Your point about, now that we have, if we were doing this with razor blades, God help us. But now that it's digital, like you really can just take a whole choir of 40 voices and move it over 2 seconds, and it's trivial. Yeah. Looks like there are a couple more questions that just came in. Liz mentioned that each singer normally doesn't get everything perfect, and in a performance would take a break and breathe while someone else covers a high note or a tricky place, etc. My question is, since all these tracks are being combined, couldn't a singer still do that occasionally? Once it's all combined together, it wouldn't be noticeable, would it?
Totally. And it's just the way that I am as a person, that I want to do all the parts and I want to get it all correct. But that being said, I still breathe in very weird places. I'll breathe, in the middle of notes, and because I know it is being covered. It's just sort of like a mental thing with me that I really I don't want to drop certain things, and because I don't have Sarah or Jen or whoever with me. I don't have the opportunity to collaborate that way, because maybe I'm taking something off that they would prefer to take off. So yeah, it's definitely all possible. It's just I have to remember that even though it's just me recording, it's not just me.
And I personally, I find it really hard to sing in, this is my little studio office. It's purposefully very dry. There's not much reverb. And there's a huge difference between singing Renaissance music in a chapel and singing it in your office. It's just, it's a different experience. And so I think that might play into it as well a little bit. Like when you're singing in a group of 4 people in a chapel, it's just a different animal. No other way around it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, an important thing to recognize. You asked, or someone asked a while ago, feedback from our singers. The biggest feedback that I got from my singers is that they're like, well, this is not choir. This is not what, I mean, they understand that, I haven't seen them since March, like it is what it is, but that this is a different thing, and recording themselves individually is a different activity than singing together in a choir.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. Sounds like there's one other question, and then maybe some time for a couple of final thoughts. And this is the question about sort of the audio software. Does the audio software strip the audio from videos? In my experience, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So, you may have to, like on the Mac in QuickTime, you can open a video and then export it as audio only and then pull that in. But there may be other solutions.
Cakewalk does strip the audio, so if you just dump a video in there, it rips the audio out of it.
So there you go. Yeah. One other question, and then I think we'll, oh, let's see. Did you forget this one? Oh, yes. Oh, Steve had a question, and I did forget. Okay. So let's see, how about a following track of 4 people, SATB, singing the parts, following the conductor, each recorded separately, and the various parts sent to the singers with the video of the conductor? What will be the problems? Is this a terrible idea? If I follow, it's sort of like making guide tracks, but sort of doing it with a single. Oh, okay. I think I see what Steve is saying. The idea is you create guide tracks and then use the guide tracks instead of the video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it'd work fine.
I think it depends on the piece. Yeah, and like personally, I don't like singing to just my own part. It's helpful to learn it that way if need be, but I would much rather record to hearing all the parts, or even just the other parts and not my own.
Yeah, I would agree. Like in those tracks that you're making, have your part predominant, and in the background hearing the other voice parts really helps a lot.
Yeah, I agree. If I was unclear before, when I do guide tracks with one part, it's part dominant. It's not just that part.
Yeah.
And then I always also send out a balance track as well, because some folks can hold on to their own notes and would rather hear the other ones.
Okay, so this is a follow-up from Steve. The singers would be singing together in the same room at the same time. So this is a flexibility thing. So you would have, we're assuming sort of social distance. We have a rehearsal room. You'd have 4 SATB, probably with their own close mics situation, and the conductor would be conducting. So it would be essentially a live, flexible musical performance that you would then send the tracks to the singers, who would then match their part.
That would work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and I would probably
too, is it work?
If you have the capability to multi-track record that, so that each close mic on each singer then is in a different audio file, so that you can, edit volumes and things like that later on, that'd be ideal.
And it would be way more enjoyable than just a piano or just a MIDI track. It would be, yeah, it's so nice when you can sing with other voices.
And I think there's one last question, and then we'll close up. This is from Barbara. Has anyone tried rough recordings for rehearsal purposes, so that you can iterate over the process? So as a way of sort of building up as you might in a rehearsal, so that you're not rehearsing yourself over and over again in isolation, that you're trying to sort of match a track, if I understand your question.
One of the projects that we didn't end up finishing because our district changed what fourth quarter looked like was actually like that. The kids had assignments, and it was, send me your recording of whatever song it was we were working on, and then I was going to give them feedback and then send me another recording, which worked really well for online, choral ed. I don't know how that would go over with adults, if you have an adult situation. Probably not well.
I'm not a huge fan of the idea. It'd be okay. I'm not a huge fan, but I will say somewhat in relation to that, the more the director can mark up the score before you send it to us, and all of those like little nitpicky things that like you don't want to be condescending to people, you don't want to be insulting, insult away. Like every 8th breath you need to give me, every do you want a dental tea, do you want, be really specific, because that means the end product is going to be better, and you won't have to go back and say, oh, just kidding, can we fix that? Or like be super specific if you can be.
Yeah, and I think that also John had asked a question on the public feed, and that kind of addresses his question. It's the specificity of things that are just taken for granted in rehearsal that is the most challenging part technically for singing solo alone, because everyone has their own interpretation as to how much is actual dental tea and how much is too much, and everyone's forte is different, and that I think was the largest challenge with singing sololy, is just getting everyone on the same bandwagon and understanding the same definitions.
Yeah, and it's easy to forget when you're just recording yourself that like, oh, right, this is going to be a choral piece. Like, at least for me, it's like, oh, this requires a different kind of singing. Like maybe it's not just like my solo the entire time.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up right about there. I just sort of want to underscore something that's been, you know, talked about here and there, and that we miss doing this live an awful lot. For the time being, this is what we got, and people are finding new ways to make music together. I think I want to see if I can't put together a panel at some point about remote rehearsing, because I think there are some people who are experimenting with rehearsing remotely, that there are ways to get faster connections so that the lag time is not as much of an issue. And I want to talk to some of those folks and see how much success they're having, because that might be a reality for a little while, is remote rehearsing. Because for me anyway, that would be far more enjoyable, even in my little space here, than just singing into a box and then hopefully having it come together somewhere down the line. So thank you so much to Zach and Zachary and Liz for taking the time to be here. Thank you all for being here tonight. If everything went correctly and this recorded, then the recording will be on the Choral Arts New England website when I figure out how to do that. So choralarts-newengland.org. This is just the third of what we hope will be sessions that go on throughout the summer, ways to get together and talk about the things that are current and that we are all dealing with right now. So be well, take care, and thank you so much all for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.